So I'm on the phone with my son, and we are also on a Skype call so that you can hear what we're talking about. Unfortunately, the internet connection between where he is in South Carolina and me out here in the Mid-Atlantic is a little crummy, but we found a way around it by me calling him on the phone so he can hear if I have any questions or anything. And I'm here. You guys are probably going to hear my dogs barking at Josh's dogs as they hear it in the computers. So when we left off, Josh was sharing a lot from the heart. He had some great messages for parents, for other people, including young people and adults, about what it's like to go through a struggle, needing help, reaching out for help. And Josh and I had spoken a few times that he had requested that he go ahead and share less interview style and more of him just talking from the heart about where he was and leading up to that point where he wanted to end his life and where he is now. So Josh, there we are. So I'm glad you're back. Here he is. So Josh, when you kind of got through those early middle school years, going into high school, from the parent perspective, it seemed like you were kind of more self-destructive and seeming a little less as if you cared, but you were actually going through a lot of other stuff. So would you like to take it from here and kind of share what your journey's been like from that point?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I think that every teenage boy at some point is gonna, seem that way a little bit at one point or another. A little bit of apathy, a little bit of recklessness, self-destructiveness, or destructiveness in general. It's kind of built into the blood. Um, but there's a point when even that, as a young adult, that has to end, or as a teenager, that has to end. And I never, or I at the time did not take that next step, and I stayed within that realm of destructiveness, and kind of manifested into something pretty bad.
And when we had spoken last time, you'd shared you were starting to kind of get into the beginning in those early, like early teen, preteen years leading into high school. You're starting to be depressed, and your coping mechanisms, what you were using to cope versus what would have been healthier. As you got a little bit older, how do you think that changed from being just a teenage boy who's taken some dangerous risks to something that was a mental health problem?
Well, I think that I branched out, um, from something innocent, maybe just me being, a young, dumb kid, to something dangerous with I formed a very tight friendship with somebody, and we ended up having a kind of a destructive friendship. It was a friendship with a kid who was just as torn, felt that the world owed him something. Mom, you know who this person is. And we were toxic for each other, I think. And we introduced a lot to each other. We introduced each other to marijuana, to a couple other things. But we also took self-harm and we made it self-harm something that we did kind of as a coping mechanism together. We kind of fueled each other's fire with it.
So it's interesting that you brought that up. I shared with you, I received an email pretty recently, which I shared with you about a young lady a young teenager who had entered into a bit of a pact with someone very close with her that she loved, and he had agreed that to kind of join her in harming, but in his mind, he thought that she'd harm herself less if he participated in it, but it became a cycle of mutual self-destruction, and rather than them becoming more whole and cohesive together, what she found was her despair got deeper, And I shared that with you. And did you feel like that was something that you like you could, if you, when I was sharing that with you, like something that you had heard before or been through before? And what do you think maybe it is about someone that makes them want to do that? Because I know it's not just young teenagers. I've heard that some young adults do this, and you seem to have a big heart for people who are in that mindset.
Well, it comes from a place of being so out of control, of feeling that your life is so uh, uh, that your life is tumbling down a very steep hill, and you're not going to be able to stop yourself. So it's a way to maintain some semblance of control. I mean, no matter what's happening in life, you can always control what happens to your skin. And I think that people doing it in tandem with each other, um, I'm not really sure where it comes from. I think it comes from having a idea of having a relationship with that other person. You know, this is something that you and that other person have in common, something that it's kind of almost a safe place that you and this other person can share. And so when you do it together, it doesn't just bring about the comfort of doing it, but it brings about the comfort of partaking in an activity with someone else.
And it seems like there's a double-edged sword in a way. Like someone feels like they're becoming closer on one hand, but because it doesn't really heal the heart and the soul, it seems that rather than draw people closer together, it seems, which is what it feels like in the moment, in the end, it leaves both people feeling less valuable and less worthy. Is that what you felt, or do you feel like that was, like, looking into it, if a young person came to you and said they're doing this and you're coming from a place of understanding, where, how do you feel like you could encourage someone to seek help, or a parent who's learning that their kids are doing this, maybe to not freak out, but to seek help and that sort of thing, coming from the place of wisdom and knowledge you have now, having been there? How would you encourage some families or people going through that right now?
Well, one thing that I think needs to be understood is that it is going to be difficult for this person to stop. This person is doing, maybe they want somehow to get it, and this is how, you know, how they're grabbing that, whether it's some semblance of whatever it may be. It's feeling of power, feeling some people. I mean, it's feeling of just cutting the deal. So, sometimes you get to a point where you feel so empty that it's the only way to feel something.
And that, that's, it's easier for me to talk about it as a mom now because you're in such a better place. But I can remember when you came to us expressing that this was something you struggled with when you were younger. You could feel so helpless. So it's a little easier to look on the outside now and look back and be able to be rational about it. But probably understandably, parents can really freak out and get really scared and maybe not have that calm to set back and be also receptive to get help. Like I look back and I realize I was getting you help and getting resources for you, but not realizing that perhaps that would be good for me too, to help me cope. And so, but what a blessing it was, because you did learn some coping mechanisms in therapeutic times. But so as time progressed and we got through high school, it seems like, just my perspective looking, as the mom looking at it, it seemed like there was a bit of an increase in friendships that were somewhat destructive and a little pushback on other things. And I think that's probably when, as a family, things got a little more volatile, a little more arguing. And then seeing where I thought you, like as a parent, it would seem like you were just being lazy, but you really had a hard time being motivated to do much. And I think that depression, at least it appears now looking back, that it was really getting its teeth into your really good. Looking back from then to that point where by the time you were 20 and you felt hopeless, I specifically remember you said you felt hopeless, you felt like a loser, and you felt lost. From that point in high school, when it seemed like you just kind of wanted to lay around, or when you were out being a little bit more self-destructive, to that point that you wanted to take your life. Can you take us a little bit on a journey of what it felt like to be you, in the aspects of your alone time, to when your parents are trying to pull you out of your shell, and that sort of thing. Where do you think your mind was, and how would you encourage someone looking back who is where you were at that time?
Where I was at that time, I was at a place of, I knew I wanted to do something more with my life. I knew I wanted something more out of life. I wanted my situation to improve. I wanted to, look for roommates and, move out of my parents' house. And, I had just gotten my car and everything. Well, can you rephrase the question? Or say it again?
So when you got to that place where, from those high school years where you could remember the arguments of Josh, why aren't you doing your homework? Or, why don't you go get a job? And then you get a job. And, or where it would appear to an outsider looking in that there's just this lazy kid that doesn't want to do anything, when in reality you were depressed. And that depression progressed so much that even through like trying to get help over the time of counseling, your depression really seemed to take a big hold on you so much that you went from that seemingly lazy or self-destructive teenager to that young adult who felt so useless. And I'm asking because I know you were loved and had a good support system, but you still felt hopeless and alone. And I think that's what that's a side of depression. A lot of people I didn't understand that it's not like you can't necessarily love someone out of depression or push them out the door and make them work out of depression. So that progression from kind of high school to that being the young 20-year-old who just felt like he was worthless and hopeless and had a hard time going on. If looking back where you were, can you remember like how your thought patterns were maybe, and how you would help someone? If you met a young man who's 20 and he's telling you, Josh, I feel hopeless. I feel like a loser. I'm not doing anything that I should with my life. My parents are, riding my tail all the time. I can't do this anymore. How would you encourage that person who is where you were?
Well, it might sound corny or cheesy, but there's that phrase, it gets better.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's what it is. Life is all about just taking your current situation and trying to improve it. But with something like depression, you don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. And so it can be hard just to kind of push through everything. But as long as you're actively trying to make your situation better, which is really all we can hope to do out of life, is just keep making today better. Well, make tomorrow better than today. Hope that today was better than yesterday. But it's kind of a thing. Fake it till you make it. Another saying you hear all the time. But one thing that I did in high school, and this actually helped me become more confident as a person, more confident, just in daily interaction with my classmates, is I started in my junior year. I started forcing smiles. I started forcing myself to smile. When I'm holding a door open for somebody, or saying thank you for the chalk on the chalkboard or something when I was in high school. I forced myself to smile, and just that one thing, I think that made me as confident as I am today, because when you smile, you actually release endorphins that have a chemical reaction with your body that make you feel legitimate biological joy. Well, the biological interpretation of what joy is supposed to feel like. And, by faking my smile, it made it easier for the real smiles to come.
And even in your hardest parts of depression, I can remember moments like when you talk about that. You actually were at the church we go to here. You were working like cutting grass and doing things that gave you a lot of moments of relief when you could just get out and serve and there wasn't money involved. That was just you serving. But that makes me think about something else. It also opened the door for you to have people loving you that wouldn't have been invited into that. Like the gentleman from our church who you served with, he was really right there for you in those darkest moments, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he helped me. He helped me with my car last Christmas.
So what we're talking about there is the church that I go to and Josh went to when he was living with us here is a very servant-oriented church. It's a wonderful church, and Josh was part of, I think it was on the maintenance team, but he'd go and cut grass and at the church, and the gentleman that helped run that, Scott is his name, but he's probably about my age and old enough to be Josh's dad, but not his dad. And Josh was in a very low place in his life, but in those moments, he didn't only get the joy of serving, but Josh, you also developed a lifelong friend, right? Um, so a lot of you guys, if you've been following my social media or if you're really close with Josh, you might know this already, but today as we do this Skype call, this is the 2-year anniversary of the day that I got the knock on the door from Officer Santago, letting me know that Josh's car was found abandoned. And immediately after, asking me if I had reason to believe that Josh would want to harm himself. 2 weeks before that, Josh did say that was when he felt hopeless, feeling like a loser. He wanted help, and we were actively involved in that kind of beginning stage. We just had an assessment at a local counselor's office again, and we were in the process. But you were in a really dark place. Do you think you can take us so, that moment we took you to the emergency room. Praise God you survived that moment to be here today. And Josh was inpatient for about a week, not quite a week, but several days, and then outpatient for a bit of time. And things were rough for a little bit. And so, Josh, you can remember that point where about 2 months later, and it's still in the hardest days of your life, that I had to remove you from the home for your benefit more than anything else. And I remember you were really hurt by that. Scott, actually, the gentleman we were just talking about, came and had a lot to do with helping you probably see things a little bit clearly. But would you be okay with taking us from that day to where you are now, kind of briefly, like what that journey was like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once I remember that the drive from Maryland down to Georgia, down to Augusta, and it's a long drive. It's about 500 miles. But to me, I don't remember much of the drive. I don't remember it. It almost seems like that whole day was a blur. And I remember pulling into my dad's house, and my dad and my stepmom, my little sister Haley, and it felt like I was there to visit. It felt, it didn't feel real that this was really happening. And so there was kind of a denial going on for a little bit. And as it started to set in, as I was there for a little bit, and it started, waking up in that house started to feel more like every day, more than just a temporary thing. I knew that I was going to be in good hands. My father he runs a very tight ship. Let's put it that way. But at this time I was still pushing back. I openly admit I did feel resentment. I felt, I was upset that I had been kicked out of the house that I had pretty much grown up in. It's the house that I had my most significant childhood, teenage experiences. It's a house I learned to drive in, or at a house that I lived there when I had my first girlfriend. You know, a lot of my life was lived at that house. So, you know, starting over was intimidating. You know, I ended up getting a good job with a demolition company, and it was my first full-time job, my first 40-hour week job, and it was I think it's a 8 to 4:30 job, and it was different from I went from just working 2 or 3 days at an indoor pool part-time a week to, you know, having to go out into the world and experience work as, you know, as a young adult. And I think that was a big thing that influenced a maturity growth within me. Another thing though was, you know, living at that house with my dad. You know, I knew there was no way that I could get away with, you know, trying to find somebody to, you know, to give me some marijuana, or to try to find somebody to take me down to the liquor store even when I turned 21, you know. And it was at that point, it was something not even worth trying because of the possibility of, you know, being punished. But it worked out, you know, that having choices removed makes it so much easier to forget about it. It makes it easier for those binds that things have over you to loosen, to fall off. And so I was living with my dad for about 6 months, and you know, it got. I finally came to a point where I realized how much better I was feeling emotionally, mentally, and physically from being removed from the situation that I was in when I did feel hopeless, when I did feel lost, like a loser. I was in a completely different situation and I had a chance to start over. And I think I actually called you up and I told you that I loved you, and I was sorry for the mess in the house that I had made among our family. But you know, a lot of groundwork was set for me living with my dad. The first step, though, and the most important step for me to move on from that point in my life where I did feel like a loser, was you kicking me out. I mean, it wasn't something that I wanted. It wasn't something that I felt like I needed. But I don't think I could have survived otherwise. I think that, you know, that I was still in a place, you know, I was still on medication. I wasn't truly happy. I was still lost. And medication was really the only thing that gave me, you know, kind of a shade over the blinding fire of the depression that was still going on.
It kind of helped clear your mind a little bit in the beginning, didn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of helped. I remember you used to have a really hard time sleeping, and it seemed like in the beginning that helped you re-regulate, being able to sleep normal patterns and kind of lifting the fog. But something else I just remembered is, I remember you calling me because you were really struggling. I'm sure, I don't know, but it seems, I'm almost sure it must have felt a little like I was abandoning you at your darkest and hardest point. And I knew in my heart that, as precious and amazing as you are, that for your sake, because you were in such a fragile state, that we needed to get you to a place with other people that love you, for you to accept the help they wanted. But I remember a couple of things. I think one was your dad's name Tony that took you. I don't remember his name, but you went
Oh,
to
yes,
Trustee.
it was Tony.
And another thing, I think you and your dad were doing some Bible study together, kind of establishing a new way of connecting with people. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that as well?
Yes, well, one of the first things that happened within within the first week or two that I was in Georgia is my dad's friend, Tony Reese. I met up with him and he invited me to Trace Diaz. Now, I didn't know Tony. I only knew that he was a friend of my dad, and Tony didn't know me. He only knew that I was my dad's son. And Tony went out on a limb and invited me over to his house one day, and we had a lot of conversation, and I kind of told him what was going on. And I think that in light of everything, he invited me to Trace Diaz. Trace Diaz is something which has and will continue to grow as part of my life. Trace Diaz is it's a camp for adults, and they have it segregated by, they have a men's weekend and then a women's weekend. And it's from, I want to say Thursday night to Sunday evening, but it's supposed to be 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And Tres Dias is obviously, it's Spanish for 3 days. But Tres Dias it's a congregation of Christian men. It's all Christian run, and only people who have gone through Tres Dias as participants can work it. And because of that specific aspect of this men's camp, well, of this Christian's camp, which I happen to go to the men's camp, I mean, I have formed relationships with people that I still talk to every now and then, and with people that I still go and visit in Georgia. But the thing with Trace is I can't really give away too much over video or at all, because it's
confidential.
You're supposed to be shocked. Yeah, you're supposed to be shocked when you go through. I will say that I cried and I laughed more in a 3-day period than I probably ever have.
That was really cleansing for you. You came back and you were doing some, like, I don't know if it was daily or weekly Bible studies with your dad, but you were also able to connect with someone who wanted all this time to love on you and help you through this. And that might have been the first time since you were very little that you guys can reestablish that side of your relationship. What was that like for you, and how do you look upon that when you're looking back now?
I'm really glad that I got to have that experience, and I'm hoping that I'll have more of those experiences with my dad. But those were moments, those were times that I'm going to treasure. We may not have done them as regularly as we should have, but those times that they did, I remember every time I got something away from it. Each time we'd go over like in Proverbs, you go over each book for a day in the month, and then you read the whole book of Proverbs again. And I remember each time I'd go back to Proverbs 12, and then next time I'd go down to Proverbs 12 and I'd read it and then read it. And I remember each time I'd get something out of it, something I couldn't pick up before, but something that I've been able to apply to my life.
It's just so beautiful to see, no one, the special relationship between my son and me is, it's beautiful. And I'm sure a lot of mothers have similar things with their son, but I can say it's such a rare thing to have someone so young. Josh is only 22. He's a young man and been so honest and vulnerable with me. never claimed to be perfect or never claimed that these struggles just went away and temptations never reappeared. I remember Josh was sharing with me, Josh had been going to Celebrate Recovery, and I didn't understand what Celebrate Recovery fully was, and it was a great program for someone in recovery, but I didn't understand how it works. And I said, so Josh, how many more meetings or something Celebrate Recovery you have? And do you remember what you told me?
Never.
Never end. And I got to tell you, like, that was a blessing to me because not too long after you were with your dad and your stepmom, just, I mean, the two of them just loved on you in a way. I think they've been hungry too for a long time. They didn't want you to hurt either. But I didn't realize I was becoming depressed because my depression symptoms weren't what I thought was normal. And when I asked you that, I was at the beginning of getting treated for depression. And I realized it is a process. So I don't know if you know, I might be announcing it for the first time here on Skype and in me videos, but I've made it through my first, I think this is my 4th month not needing medication. But I needed it so that I could eat again, so I could sleep well, so that my response and coping mechanisms were better. And just to share that, like you've just been so willing to be an active participant in your recovery, but also in the work that I feel called to do and helping other people and other families see that this is the face of depression. This is the face of many families, many good, loving families. It's a lot of kids feel like they're worth less. A lot of young adults feel like they're worth less because they're struggling like you did. And do you remember I used to always say, I just want you to be okay? We might have some like big blowout argument and you'd be like, you know, why are you on my back? Maybe that's not how you said it, but that's how it felt. And I'd say, just want you to be okay. And I got to learn that you just wanted me to be okay. So on the 2-year anniversary of one of the hardest days of our lives as a family, as you, as me, I'm able to say that we're both perfectly imperfect and works in progress and recovering in our own ways, but wanting to make a difference. You still serve with Tristius, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. I wasn't able to attend this past weekend, but I will be going to this next weekend, or I plan to be going to this next weekend, which will be held in fall.
How awesome is that? Like, just 2 years later to see how far God has brought you, how far you've brought you. And then in like a week and a half, so if many of you guys don't know that I'm competing for the title of Mrs. International, and Josh, my very handsome, check out the good hair he's got going on over there. My son has been the inspiration behind the Child Stigma campaign. He's been the inspiration behind me getting educated on educating teenagers and parents like us on becoming more aware of when is someone more than sad, meaning, you know, when is someone just a little sad and when do they need help through American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Had we not gone through this very, very difficult and painful time, maybe my calling would have been different, but that is what we went through, and I'm sure that this is the door God has opened up for us to do as a family. But anyway, at the pageant, it turned out my husband can't join me, and most wives are going to be presented by their husbands in the evening gown portion of competition. And when my husband let me know that he couldn't, I was very bummed, to say the least. But then I was wondering if Josh could. And as soon as I found out I could, called him right away. You were just able to confirm yesterday that you could. So I feel like this was like a God thing too, that God opened a door by closing another, so that together at the international pageant we can be that face of recovery, of healing and restoration. And like you said, it gets better. It's funny when people say, like, what advice would you give to your younger self, like in these little Facebook posts? I often think that it gets better, keep going. So, Josh, before we end our video portion here, is there anything that you would like to share? Any words of hope, promise, advice, anything about you or anything that you'd like to share before we close it off?
Yeah, you know, when you're at that bottom, the very bottom of the ditch, when it doesn't look like there's any light over the horizon, you know, when you're in that place where you feel like you're a loser, where you feel hopeless, where you feel lost, it comes down to you. It doesn't come down to anybody else. Nobody else can make your situation better. Nobody else can pull you through that. You can't depend on anybody but number one to pull yourself through that. And that's what it is. It's knowing that, hey, you're already at the bottom. They can't do anything but get better. And strong arm it. Just look it in the face and know that it's not going to be you.
I know I I had a talk with someone once that I was training a client when I was working more full time as a trainer who had expressed her despair and feeling that way, and made me think sometimes someone may not feel like they can strong arm it, but then people will lend a hand, and it seems like a lot of times people are scared to take that hand and let someone else help pull them through it. And you were really blessed because you were reluctant to accept that strong hand from Amber, your very loving stepmom, from your dad, who loves you so much, and us, but accepting other people to be there for you to help you, so that you could strong arm it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
hard for so many people to accept help, but it's there. you know. Um, and I would tell all of you moms and dads or husbands or wives, children, sometimes grown children taking care of parents who are suffering like this, it's really important to get care for yourself. If you're loving someone who feels hopeless, worthless, and they are being treated um, for the suicidal tendencies and ways and depths of major depressive disorder, that would be the one thing that I didn't do early on because I just didn't know, that I would encourage anyone to do. It may not be that you're depressed, but just getting some support early on as an early intervention would be really good. And to let that depressed person know that you're not doing your loved ones any favors by holding that pain in to protect them from it. So, but Josh, I am so excited that next Thursday, I think it is that when you're going to arrive? Friday is the husband's meeting, but you're going to be my son husband for the weekend. So I'm going to see Josh in person next week, and he's going to get hugged quite a bit. Here comes the hug. And I thank all of you who are following our journey. We are not done with this yet. I think we're going to keep making a difference in the lives of a lot of other people. And Josh, I love you. I am so proud of you. I'm so proud it actually outweighed the tendency to cry this time.
Me too, Mama.
Bye.
Bye.
There you are. That was awesome, Josh. I'm just so blessed by you.